The second largest Smash Ultimate tournament ever and the most stacked Smash Bros. Ultimate tournament, maybe Smash Bros. Tournament ever, is happening this weekend in Japan with Kagaribi number 13. So today, I want to show you the insane depth of this tournament, as well as go over what I think is going to be happening in bracket. And of course I'm going to be wrong. I was kind of right with Elijahman at Level Up Expo, so I'm pretty happy about that, but I did not respect Kiyorash's game. But this is going to be even crazier. I looked at the 256 top seeds at the Thief of Life post, and I could recognize almost every single name there, which is insane for a top 256. And a lot of them, it's probably just because I misread the kanji, or I misread the hiragana or katakana or something like that. This is insane. This is going to be a lot, and this is going to be a long prediction video, but I am so excited for this tournament. So as a really quick overview, you can pause to read if you want, but the top 16 seeds are in order: Spargo, Akala, Doramigi, Mia, Zomba, Shootone, Syrup Light, Oshimo, Sonics, Leo, Raru, Gluttony, Tweak, Onin, and Carmelo. Basically, obviously, I recognize every single name on this page, right, with a couple of standouts, obviously all the top seeds. I'm looking for it. I feel like Susu can do pretty well. He's been on a hot streak. Maidodona HO, just top 2 to a major. It's going to be insane. But let's continue to the next page. Again, I basically recognize all of these names. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 that I don't at this point, but you have names like Kanaji, Rimu, you have Ling Ling down here, Huto's Wario, Danny Tootheny, who just beat Tweak at the pre-local. Apollo Kage is seed 113, and I know y'all know who Apollo Kage is. Insane Daigoto, who made top 8 at majors, Dio, who has made top 8 at majors. Like, basically all these players I feel like have made top 8 at majors, maybe except for Seado. But again, they are quite a good Mario. Then this next page, at seed 129, we have Futari no Kiwami A, who is like the second best ice climbers in Japan. For a while was the best ice climbers. We have Teshi here, Zurzel. Honestly, Teshi is, I feel like, low seeded. Tora is also here. Atorie is here. Atorie is 166. Toda's 150. Tassa's Piranha Plant, who has 3-stocked Oshimo's Ryu and beat him, is seed 182. We have 3 Mii Brawlers in a row in Yeast, Lunamato, and Rinoha. We have Tsubo's Joker down here. Like, Shion's Zero Suit is down here as well. And Shion, as far as I remember, if this is the correct Zero Suit, has beat Akola at locals. And that's seed 192, and seed 256 is Trigger, who I believe is the best Belmont in Japan. We have Ball down here at 240, who was top 8 at a major. We have the best Ganon in the world here in Higa-chan. We have Tomaitu, who's one of the best Pikachus in Japan. We have G Extreme here. So many amazing players. Maipan, who's one of the best Zeldas in Japan. Like, it is insane. We also just have like Pow, OPZ, like there are so many amazing players here. Salt Lord, who's one of NorCal's best, is literally 234. Like, this is the top 256. This is insane. I feel like if you splash some of the names from here onto a top 64 graphic for like majors or super majors in the US, that would make sense. Like, Rarkior is down here. He's destroyed Gluttony multiple times. That's so insane. LY the Corin that beat Spargo is down here at seed 228. I don't think you understand exactly how messed up this tournament is, so I'm going to be going over the pools. Let's see what I think is going to happen and what potential upsets can happen, because there's going to be a lot of them. Also, I was wrong. Mado is the Zero Suit who beats Akola, so he's even lower seeded, 211, as opposed to Shion, who I thought it was. So like, that's 19 spots lower, and this person has like a 3-0 record on Akola, and they're seed 211. That's so insane. So let us just go into the first pool. I don't know if I'm doing all these pools in orders, but again, I'm going to go here and then go my way up, kind of like the Level Up Expo, because it seemed like y'all appreciated that. So let's go. First off, we have Gluttony versus Masami, or Mazami. I don't exactly know who Mazami is. I'm assuming Gluto's going to win. Gluto's very strong, but again, this is best of, I think this set is best of 3, and then this set is going to be best of 5, based on what it said like in the pools. So I think Gluttony is going to make it here versus Jagabata, who's the Duck Hunt that just got 3rd at a major, and this is to make top 190. Like, this is, if you lose here twice, you get 129th, which is so insane. And I do think Gluttony is probably going to beat Jagabata, but it probably will be a closer set than you would expect for sure. Then we have Umeki versus Nakatai, who I don't know who that is. And again, Umeki's very good, but he is upset prone, so he might lose to Nakatai, but I'm just going to assume he will win. But also then we have Karaage versus Oolong, and this is not the Wii Fit Oolong as far as I'm aware. That'd be insane, honestly, if it was. But Karaage will probably win that. The Falcon is nuts. And then Falcon versus Peach. I'm just going to assume Umeki will win that, but I wouldn't be surprised if Karaage would win that. We have Zachary versus EZS. EZS very, very strong, but Zachary's my GOAT, so I'm going to say that Zachary's going to win that. And then we have Jackal versus Wine. Ironically, Jackal is probably one of the only people with a lot of Zelda experience in the US. It's either you live in Vegas or you live near Free K-Flock, and I think Jackal has a lot of Free K-Flock experience. I could be wrong about that. Let me double check. Yeah, is 4-1 versus Free K-Flock, so I will assume that Jackal is going to beat Wine, but then we have Jackal versus Zachary again to make top 192 winners, which is insane. God, that's so crazy. I think Loki Jackal could do that, but again, Zachary's my GOAT. I feel like it's really hard to beat Zachary with like a super normal character at this game, so I'm going to say that Zachary is going to win that. Super Semi just had a really good run at, I think Cafeteria Cup was the tournament, beating Leo. He's beat Leo, Spargo, and Big Boss recently, which is kind of crazy. He's the Loki, the Mexico Slayer, so his youngling probably going to make it past, who is this? Kazuhito? I don't know who that is, but also like any of these, I don't even know where it is in bracket, but I do know that there is like the #1 player on Smashmate at this point is a Kazuya who has never been to an offline event, and they're unseeded for this tournament because they've never gone to an offline event, so that can cause some craziness in the bracket. I don't even know where that is. And then we have Chicken, who will probably win this, just because, I mean, I feel like Diddy Kong is just such a consistent character in bracket unless this player is a Steve, but Gao-san? I forget who they play, but I feel like I know that name. Oh, right, it's the Incineroar. Yeah, so we have Incineroar versus Diddy Kong. I feel like that's pretty good for Diddy Kong. And then we're going to have Young Link versus Diddy Kong, which I feel like is low-key pretty good for Young Link. So I'm going to say Super Sammy's going to win that, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if Chicken wins. Chicken is very, very good. And that was all just the first pool. Next up, we have Mia, who's probably going to make it through, honestly, whoever he has to play at the beginning. And then he is projected to play Danny Tooth, Denny's Wolf. I feel like Danny can do pretty well in the matchup, but I would assume Mia will win that. But Danny also has to beat Shupi, who is very, very strong. I would still give it to Danny, but I wouldn't be surprised if Shupi won that. Waka versus Ko. Again, Waka, very strong Luigi player, and I will also, this is the year Luigi. Waka's low-key going to make top 8 winners. And then he's going to have to play the winner of Gachipi and Tsu. I don't know if Tsu mostly plays Terry at this point, but this is going to potentially be Lucario Ditto, so either way, Waka's going to fight a Lucario. And I do think that, honestly, regardless if it's Lucario or Terry, I feel like Luigi has a good matchup against both of those, but also Gachipi's insane. Like, such an incredibly strong player that I don't like. Literally, the last time a bunch of US players came here, Gachipi upset Zomba, who was, again, relatively fresh off of his Genesis win last year. And then Gachipi just kind of said, no, I win. So, wouldn't be surprised if Gachipi won, but I will give it to Waka. That seems like a good matchup. Then we have Daki versus LY. I'm assuming Daki's going to win that. Again, he's been playing so well recently. And then we have Orion versus Dappy, but I do think Orion... Oh, actually, I think Dappy's going to win that. I feel like Orion hasn't been doing super fantastic recently. I could be wrong. I could be misinformed about the French scene, so apologize. But I do think, regardless, Daki's going to win this, and he's going to advance here. And then we have... So then we have Mudace versus Maipan, and I don't know how Peach versus Zelda goes. I feel like Mudace is pretty good in that matchup, and I do know you can float out of Phantom range, but still, that's a hard matchup for Mudace for the round. Before the round, you make it into top 192. And then we have Suna versus Lucky, of course, amazing Greninja player, but Lucky's plant kind of nice. I would assume Suna would win that, but I wouldn't doubt if Lucky could. And Lucky versus Mudace would low-key be a hot set. I think Mudace would beat Suna, but I think it would be close. Honestly, Suna might go Roy against Lucky. I don't know if Roy or Greninja would be better for that matchup. It is hard to tell, but I think Mudace will prevail against either of those two. And again, that was only to pool 2. And there's 16 of these type of pools, which is insane. We have Light versus TKM. Light had a really, really good showing at Level Up Expo. He's playing really well, so I'm assuming he's going to do quite well there. I know Spritzy was unable to get the funds to go, so kind of by process of elimination, Sumaho automatically advances, and if I'm misreading the kanji, I apologize. Or not kanji, sorry, the hiragana, I apologize. But then Light, again, will probably win this. He's just such a strong player. If you're able to beat Raru in one of your worst matchups, you're probably going to be fine for the most part. Masa has been doing very well. He has to play against Nininga, and I don't know who that is. But Moss will probably win that. Then we have Anarchy versus Lunamato. So again, Anarchy, Greninja, really, really strong. But Lunamato, one of the upcoming players, just got top 8 at the Major Meister one, which is kind of insane with Mii Brawler and Sword Fighter and Bowser versus Candle. So I wouldn't doubt if Lunamato won, but I will assume that Anarchy will win. But like, if I read this, I'd be like, oh, that makes sense. Meister versus Sankotu. I don't know who Sankotu is, so I will assume Meister win this, and I don't know kanji at all. But this person is seeded to beat Omoatsu. Oh, this is Kuhaku, the DK. Okay, so Kuhaku seeded to beat Omoatsu, which honestly, I feel like Omoatsu is going to win that just because DK versus Min Min is really bad for DK. This tournament is so not okay. But I do think low-key Omawatsu might make it through this whole section, but Meister, if it is Kuhaku will definitely win. Then we have Taikei versus Skew. Taikei's been playing really well recently, so Taikei will win that. And then Kunaji versus Yuzu. Shulk versus, I think this is Rosa, is pretty bad for Rosa, so I'm assuming Kunaji will win that. And I don't know how Sonic versus Shulk is. Honestly, this is going to be a tight set. I think that this is probably the tightest set so far of everything that I've really thought about. But I would assume Sonic does well, so I'm going to say that Taikei is going to win. Daru versus Adrian. Don't know who Adrian is, but Daru will probably win that. We have Atada versus Leia. Oh my god, so the Greninja player who is so strong has to play Atada here. I honestly would probably give this to Leia. I don't know the record with Leia and Gact. So is 3-2 versus Gact? So definitely knows the matchup, so I would say Leia's probably going to win this, and then Leia versus Raru, low-key would probably be kind of close, but then Raru would get like random up-Bs on dash attacks or like parries on some stuff into up-Bs, so I'm going to assume Raru wins that, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if this ended up being Leia. Raru has been getting upset sometimes, but also he just made it to winner's quarters, so he's probably going to be fine. We have Ryuo versus number 8, don't know who number 8 is. Ryuo has been playing very, very good, and then we have him versus Ryope if he beats Iba, which I think he will. Ryope's snake has been very good recently, plus we need a top snake from Japan here, considering the fact that Hurt is not entering due to his ban because of his modded Switch. And I mean, Snake versus Diddy Kong is pretty weird, so honestly, I feel like, but Ryo is so good, so I'm going to say probably Ryo is going to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ryope won, which I know I'm saying a lot, but that's just the strength of all of these two players. It is insane. We have Lima versus Depo, the Mega Man. This is so unfortunate for Repo because like Lima has so much Mega Man experience because of Peanut over in South Carolina at the moment because of their collegiate thing. So Lima probably going to obliterate that. We have Noe versus Mito. I'm not sure who that is, so I will probably say that Noe is going to win that. I think Lima's just going to win this section, but I wouldn't be surprised if Noe won, because Noe really, really strong as a player. I believe that's the Pokemon trainer Olimar player, so strong. Like, that is a ridiculous match for top 192. I still will say Lima's probably going to win, but it's going to be close. Then we have Goryoka versus Mion. I think Goryoka will win that. We have Andres FN versus Natsu. I feel like I do know who Natsu plays. I feel like they play like Falco or something. I'm actually going to double check. Oh no, Natsu's a Pokemon trainer player. Okay, so we have Pokemon trainer versus, I think Andres FN is still on Terry, which I think PT can do pretty well in the matchup, but I will say that Andres FN's probably going to win that. And then Goryoka versus Andres FN. That's a hot set. Goryoka's Joker is so fun to watch. Andres FN is sometimes one of the most explosive players in the world. I'll give it to Andres FN. I think Andres FN can win that. Carmelo is probably going to win his first set. He is so strong. Plus, it's really hard to just randomly beat Steve. Then we have Apollo Kage versus Teshi. So we have Snake versus Samus, which I think is a good matchup for Samus. I don't know how good Apollo Kage is at it. So I could low-key see Teshi winning this. And either way, I do think Carmelo is going to beat AK or Teshi. So I will say that Carmelo advances here. We have Candle versus Kasapi, who I don't know who that is. Candle, very strong. I will say they will win this. Then we have Sin versus Igolski, but Sin's Ice Climbers is just so strong. Ooh, and then we have Ice Climbers versus Olimar. I think Sin is going to win that. I feel like Ice Climbers versus Olimar is quite good for Ice Climbers. Really hard to like pin them down with all the Pikmin stuff. Blizzard walls can be super annoying, so I think that's going to happen for sure. Cola versus Ball. Low-key, Ball can do it. Cola's probably going to win because Cola is very good, but I want this set streamed. This is going to be a hot set because they're both going to beat each other up, and it's going to be really, really fun. Then we have Daigoro, the Corrin player, versus Iams Sheik. I do think that Corrin is quite favored versus Sheik in the meta of 2025 at least, so probably going to be Daigoro, and then I will say Cola is probably going to beat Daigoro. I know he has lost to Shattuck in the past, but I feel like they're close sets, and Shattuck a bit stronger than Daigoro, so I assume that Cola is going to win this. Then we have Shion probably going to make it here versus Nihon KB's Diddy Kong, sorry, KNB's Diddy Kong. I don't know who Eruon Yokoshapu. Don't know who either of those players are, so I'm assuming this is going to happen like this, and then I assume Shion will win that. Hero, very, very strong. He's such a good player right now. And again, we're like barely halfway through the pools. And I know this seems like, oh, this isn't a lot, you're just looking at the bracket, but also I want to just like describe to you how messed up this tournament is that like this many hype matches can happen. We have Doramegi, who's going to trounce literally anyone that is right here. Of course, Doramegi just won Level Up Expo, and then is going to probably fight Spickles after playing Diteshia, and I do think, honestly, Diteshia might win win that, but I feel like Spickles has been playing really, really well in Georgia recently, and I want that to happen, and then we're going to have another Luigi versus Min Min match, but I feel like Dora Migi will probably win that. I don't know if there are any Min Min players in Georgia for Spickles to have, but if Spickles makes this upset and then Omega ends up winning this, that would be so unfortunate of a Georgia team kill. May fly all the way to Japan, play Georgia in top 192, that would be unfortunate. Omega has to play Niai, and I do think Omega will win that. Omega's playing so well recently. I'm still going to try to find his VODs from Level Up Expo. Then we have Masha's Wolf right here. So we're going to have Wolf versus Joker. Of course, a classic Fundies game here, but that's going to be a hot set. We have Cosmos over Sabuten, which I do think will happen. Nao versus Suinoko. Oh, that's a crazy set to call. Mario or Young Link? I mean, I think Mario wins that matchup, so we're going to have Cosmos versus Nao, and I do think Cosmos would probably win that. I do think Aegis does pretty good versus Mario. Yoshidora versus JY, I do think Yoshidora will win that. And then Gact versus Tomisa, I do think Gact will win that. I haven't seen him super recently, but that's just, I don't think he traveled. Did he go? Oh no, he got upset by Widara at Genesis. That's what happened. Bowser Jr. has no weaknesses. And I do think Yoshidora is probably going to win that. I wouldn't be surprised if Gact beat Yoshidora, but let's look at their record. God, I love Smasher's app, able to just do this so consistently. Yeah, he's 1-0 versus Gact, and it was 3-1. So again, Gact can do that, but Yoshidora is very, very strong. He also won one of the pre-locals today, so he's looking in good form. We have Syrup versus Levi. Syrup, again, currently one of the best players in the world. I'm going to say Syrup's going to win that. We have Mati, who I don't know who that is, versus Rivers. I'm going to give it to my boy Rivers. Rivers is super strong, so I do think Rivers will win that, and then lose to Syrup, which is unfortunate. We have Maradona HO, the DK we just covered, having to play against Navy here if Navy beats Rinoha. Oh, wait, that's a hard set. That's a hard set for Navy. But I do think Navy will probably, I mean, Luigi does well versus Mii Brawler, so I think that will probably still be Navy's win, but it's going to be not easy, and Maradona has to beat Miko. Don't know who Miko is. I'm going to assume Maradona will win that. Ken versus Uto. Ken, one of the most consistent players in Japan, will be fine. Yu versus Shirome. I think that Yu will also win that. Again, very strong players, but Yu is just a little bit better, and Ken will probably advance with this Sonic here. Then we have Siski versus Maroku. I'm not sure who that is. So Siski, very, very strong, but then it's going to have to... Oh, wait. Bimu and Peanut? That is a scary game right here. I mean, so yeah, Rimu, after his performance at the Throne, probably beat Peanut. I mean, Peanut, that's a hard game for him. And then whoever wins that will beat Siski. I know that Min Min does well versus Samus, so if Rimu makes it here, I'm honestly going to give it to him. And if it's Peanut here, Siski probably wins. I don't know how you win Samus versus Little Mac, but also Peanut is my GOAT. And never sleep on Little Mac. If Peanut makes it out of here in winners, he's a god, and you should go subscribe to him on YouTube, which you should do anyway, even if he loses. Sorry if the lighting changed. I had to go kiss my wife. Good morning. Next up, we have MK Leo's pool against Gia. Don't know who that is. MK Leo's probably going to win. Chon versus WebJP. WebJP has done very well versus the Foxes. He's beat Light a couple times. So I'm actually going to give that to WebJP, even though Chon is good. I do think Light is better and WebJP can win that. Then we have WebJP versus Leo. Leo's been on it recently, so I do think Leo will probably win this versus WebJP, but again, wouldn't be surprised. It depends on how just well WebJP is going to play, you know what I'm saying? Then we have Neo versus Domi. I do think Neo is going to win that. Let me Google this kanji, because I don't know kanji like that. It's not Kuhaku, because we already did Kuhaku. Kudofune the Sonic. Okay, so we have Kudofune Sonic versus Neo. I mean, Neo does well versus the Sonic players. I think Neo will win that. We have Akaki Kusu versus Rarkior. Obviously, I think there's a small advantage for the heroes playing the non-Japanese players because language difference. The fact that Akikuzu was able to do well in America with English menu is kind of insane. But I don't know how Hero versus Sora is, so maybe Rarkior can win that. And then we have Roki, who's the Isabel player, versus Toura. Wait, that's a crazy matchup for that round. Toura's return. I mean, I know Toura, I think, wasn't playing for a long time, and then Yaoda took, like, the lead, but Toura was the original really good Samus in Japan. I don't know how Samus versus Isabel is. Obviously, Charge Shot can be scary because it can be pocketed, but honestly, I'm going to say Toura's going to win that, and then I feel like whoever wins this is probably going to win this game, whether it's Akka or it's Rarkior. We have Peanut versus Ocha. Peanut has been able to beat DeBuzz before, so I'm going to say Peanut can probably win this, and then Leaf is just so good. Again, I don't know the kanji, but I'm going to say Leaf's going to win that, and then Peanut versus Leaf. I could see Leaf winning, but I feel like the all the projectiles of Mega Man kind of stuffed the projectiles of Robin, so I'm going to say Peanut is going to win that. Next pool, Onin versus Whip. Don't know who Whip is. Onin will probably win that regardless. Fire, yeah, they're an Aegis player. They're actually quite good. So honestly, Fire could probably win this, but Anin just came off of second at Level Up Expo. They're playing super strong. I think Anin will win that. Then we have Deno versus Kyon. Again, Deno just had the really good run at Cafeteria Cup or whatever tournament it was. So I'm thinking he'll beat Kyon. Kyon is like really good, but just hasn't had that super solid result. Then we have Skeleton versus Nano. Kazuya is strong. So then we're going to have Deno versus Kazuya in Skeleton. And I don't know how Reno normally does versus the Japan Kazuyas or the Japanese Kazuyas. But honestly, I'm going to say Skeleton's probably going to win that. I believe in him. Then next up we have Tamapi Daifuku versus Tomato, who's I feel like I know that name in terms of who they play, but I don't off the top of my head. So let me look up Tomato, Bayo, and Pika. Interesting. Oh right, yeah. Sorry, seeing it in the hiragana is a little different. So honestly, that could be like Pika does pretty well versus Bayo in my opinion. You know, I feel like I played Tamapi in friendlies. I don't think he was super good at the matchups, but I'm assuming Tamapi will just do things to win anyway. And then we have Dio versus Mitara. I don't know how Snake Meta Knight is. Low-key, I think Mitara is probably going to win that and then lose to Tamapi because one frame. I mean, one frame escapes here, but like you kind of hurt yourself as opposed to just getting out of the combo, so I don't know. Then we have Susu versus Kuropanzu. So Steve versus Rob. Oh, I mean, Susu's good at the Rob matchup, I feel like. Plus, he's one of the best nilling Steves in the game. But Kuropanzu's really good. I wouldn't be surprised if he won in Kuropanzu, but I think Susu is going to win that. Then we have Furaramen versus Loaf. So we have Isabel versus Wario. Loaf, I feel like can win that. I don't know. I'm going to say Loaf is going to win that unless he doesn't have any Isabel experience, which I don't actually know if he has any Isabel experience. And then Susu will probably beat both of these players anyway. Akola versus Tadakotori. That's a hard dude. Tadakotori is like just coming back into like not being retired. Like he was gone for a bit. Coming back and having to play Akola is rough. Akola will probably win that. We have Sparkle versus Paseriman. I'm surprised Sparkle's seated this high. Is this the Hero Sparkle? I'm assuming it is. So we have Hero versus Fox, which I know is a hard matchup for Hero, so honestly, Paseriman might win this, but either way, I mean, if Sparkle has to play Akola, I feel like that maybe is a pretty good set, because I know Hero does pretty well versus Steve, but I do think Akola will probably just beat both players anyway. We have Fui's Yoshi versus Luigi Kid 64. Frame 1 escapes, not very friendly for Luigi sometimes. Fui's been playing also incredibly well recently, and then has to play 33 Parent Box, which I'm surprised Fui's seated higher than, but I mean, 33 Parent Box has to play Tsubo beforehand, who I guess he'll probably beat, but like that's a hard little quarter right there. Fui, Luigi Kid, 33 Parent Box, and Tsubo. But I do think I'm gonna say 33 Parent Box gets out of this little section. I know the Yoshis do okay versus the Steves in Japan, but I do think that it's probably going to be 33 Parent Box that gets out of there. Then we have Toriguri and Kasha, who I'm not 100% sure who that is. Is this like the Chase? Like Chase, the Palu player Chase? So then we have Chase versus Awado. I don't know who that is. And Chase has been playing pretty well recently. Like he gets kind of like, he loses to like the super good players and that's it. And then it's going to be him versus Toriguri. I could really see Chase doing that, both with the Steve and the Palu. But Toriguri's kind of nice. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Chase won, but I would give like a 55-45 benefit to Toriguri here. Then we have Krebsele and Onjoji, which I don't know who that is. And Krebsele has been playing really well. And then we have Elego versus Kureta. And I think Elego is probably going to win that. And Krebsele will probably win this out regardless. Again, the Japanese scene is really good versus Steve as a whole. So it's kind of hard. But I do think that's going to happen. Then we have Shutone, who's going to make it past, honestly, whoever. It doesn't really matter. Ling versus SSSR. Ling obviously has a lot of Rob experience. He is near Zomba. And I believe they've played a lot. But SSSR is really good. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if he wins. But I'm going to give it to Ling. Then we have MK Big Boss versus Ike's Snake. Very confusing. I'm pretty sure Ike is the Snake player. And I believe Big Boss will probably win. That has a lot of Snake experience. Then we have Mark versus Kyoko. I don't know who Kyoko is. Mark's Yoshi's been doing very well recently. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mark beat MK Big Boss. Honestly, I'm going to give it to Mark there. We have Shattuck versus Kudo. I don't know if that is like the Zero Suit Kudo. I could be wrong about that. And then we have Hero versus Jagaimo, which is kind of insane that this is this early. One of the top Falcons in the world, and of course the best Bowser in the world. That's a hard, because like you're gonna get two framed every time, but like I mean Hero's so good, so I guess I have to give it to him. And then Shattuck, I feel like low key Bowser does pretty good versus Corrin, like low key, but I do think Shattuck's probably gonna solid up and win. Then we have Motsunabe and Pirume. I don't know who Pirume is, so Motsunabe will probably win that. And then PK Chris versus Atorie. PK Chris has been playing so good recently, but I will still give this to Atorie. I want to look at Atorie and his record versus Gact, because I still think, even though PK Chris has been doing really well, I do think Gact is still just a little bit better. So if Atorie has a decent, nope, it's 1-4. That's hard. Whoops. So that'll be a hard set. And then I do think, I feel like if PK Chris makes it to here, he can probably beat Motsunabe. I don't know if Motsunabe would go Brawler in this matchup. It's hard to tell. That's going to be a really interesting little quarter. I don't know. I'll give it to PK Chris because of the Gact record, and then this, I don't know. That's going to be hard. But I think PK Chris can really win there. That can be some big upsets. We still have 5 pools left, which is insane. This has only been 13 of the pools, and it's been like 20 minutes, I think, that I've been going over this. We have Sonics versus Fu. Don't know who Fu is, so Sonic's probably going to win that. We have Naitoryu and Takeda. I do think that both Pika and Pichu do pretty okay versus the Shotos. A lot of strong edge guarding, and then Sonics will probably be Naitoryu. We have Alice's Roy versus Pal. I don't know which Pal. There's so many Pals in the game, but I'm going to assume Alice is going to win that. And then we have Beastly versus Toati. I don't exactly know who Toati is, but Beastly will probably win that. And then Beastly versus Alice. I feel like Beastly is pretty good versus Roy. I could be wrong about that, but I definitely feel like Beastly can win that. I don't know like Alice's record on Ryuo or anything like that, so I'm gonna double check. Also, again, God bless Smashers app. This is so nice. Oh, it was literally here. So Ryuo normally wins. Obviously, I think Ryuo is a little bit better than Beastly, but I do think Beastly can win that. We have T versus Salt Lord. That's such a bad pull for Salt Lord, dude. T is, I hate fighting that guy. That is so scary. I mean, Salt Lord can win. I think Aegis does pretty good versus, at the very least, the Pac-Man. But I don't know how efficient he is at Kazuya versus Aegis, so that's going to be a little hard. Then we have Lax's Chrom and Sora versus Tomi. I feel like I know that tag, but I don't remember. But Lax will probably win, and then T will probably beat either of those players anyway. We have Jazo versus Meiki. Jazo's been playing super well recently. Again, got like 13th or something at Level Up Expo, so I'll give hit to that. Then we have Kome and Mao. Kome's probably going to win that. I feel like that's a good matchup for Shulk. And then we have Jazo versus Kome, which I feel like is still a good matchup for Shulk. So I'm honestly going to give it to Kome. No offense, Jazo. Then we have Tweak versus Koyupan, who I'm not 100% sure who that is. Apologies. This is pretty depth of Japan in terms of like far down, because again, we're not even at like, this is still, we have 192 people left or something at this point, which is crazy. But Tweak will probably win that. Then we have Zurzel versus Nao Chao, who's a Diddy Kong. I know Diddy does well versus Min Min, so I will assume Nao Chao's going to win that. And then Tweak will almost surely win the Diddy Kong Ditto, so he's probably going to be fine there. We have Level 1 versus OPZ. Level 1, so strong, very hard to beat. Yonipi versus Abadongo. I don't know who Abadongo would play into Pichu. I mean, he can go maybe Mewtwo, but I don't know his character roster at this point, to be honest. Abadongo doesn't really play a ton. I forget what board game Abadongo plays, but I don't remember which one. But I don't know how much he plays Ultimate anymore. I'm assuming Yonipi's going to win that. He's been playing really well. Level 1 will probably also beat Yonipi. Like, Pichu can do it. If you read some like disadvantage, like double jump bomb pulls with Thunder, it can be pretty rough, but I do think that Level 1 will probably win that. We have Ryuk and Snow. Snow, again, will probably win that. I don't think it's that bad of a matchup, because I don't think Ryuk plays Shulk, which I feel like that's what my brain is telling you he plays, but I could be wrong. No, it's about a Rob. So yeah, Snow's probably going to win that. And then we have Shadow here, who I'm not sure, and then Nizemamo. Honestly, who's Shadow? But yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I think Nizemamo can definitely win this, and then regardless, I think Snow will probably win this. Then we have Uame versus Mado. Olimar does very well versus Zero Suit, so Uame will probably win that. And then we have Chag versus Harasen. Ooh, hot set. I don't know how Palu does versus Ice Climbers. I feel like Harasen can probably win that, to be honest. I don't know how in practice Harasen is, but I do think he's very strong at his peak. So Harasen can win that, and if he does, he'll probably still lose to Uame, even though I mentioned earlier that like Ice Climbers does really well versus Olimar. I think Uame is just like on another level right now. He is so strong. I mean, he beat Akola at a local like 3 days ago or something like that. So Uame, very strong there. Spargo versus Toriga. Not 100% sure who this is, but Spargo probably will win. And then we have Smub versus Futari no Kiwami who again is one of the best Ice Climbers. Ice Climbers versus Ridley is a really awkward matchup, but also Ridley's really good at killing Nana. So Smub is crazy. I'm going to give it to Smub. I don't think Japan has a Ridley like Smub, so I'm going to give it to Smub. And then low-key, Spargo might have to go Aegis in this matchup, because I do know that Ridley versus Cloud is like pretty awkward for Cloud. I don't know, has Spargo and Smub ever played? I'm curious. Because Smub is obviously insane. But obviously Spargo is Spargo. Yeah, they haven't played before. So low-key Smub can win that. Spargo will probably win, but low-key Smub can win that. Then we have Ike's Peach versus Nice Goncha. I don't know what a Goncha is, so I apologize if I'm saying anything raunchy. But Ike will probably win that very strong Peach. Then we have, oh no, this is the Inkling. Yeah, don't know who Toriga is, but then let's go to this next one. We have Shirayuki versus Shion. Wait, is this a different Shion? No, dude, there's so many. I feel like I already covered Shion. Maybe I misread some hiragana or something. But if this is the Hero Shion, then I don't know who's gonna. I mean, Shirayuki's really good. Shirayuki versus Ike. Loki, I think Shirayuki would probably win that. Shirayuki. I don't know if I'm saying it right. I always mix up the da and the u, or like where the y and the r are. So then we have Riddles versus Wanipacha. Don't know who that is. Riddles will probably win because Riddles is nice with it. And then we have Lemozon A. I feel like that wasn't his tag before, but I do know that is a strong player. But they're going to lose to Midoron in the seeding, who I don't know exactly who that is. So I'm going to give it to Riddles because Riddles is kind of nice with it. And then we have Darikusu versus Gepanga, who I mean, Darikusu's been so consistent recently. I'm going to give it to him. We have M-Popo versus Island. I will say that M-Popo's probably going to win that, but can he beat the Darikusu, DK, and Falco? I'm not 100% sure. I'll give it to Darikusu there. Zomba versus Ori. Zomba's been playing really well. Gonna give it to him. Huto versus Ryukai. Huto, I feel like, is a little bit stronger as a player, and then Zomba will probably win that. I mean, if you're able to like do well versus Gluto, which he has pretty recently, I think Zomba's going to win that. We have Kamame versus Yuzha, the Pikachu. I think Kamame will win that, unfortunately. We have Tarek. Why did I say his name like it's in Japanese? I've been reading so much Japanese. We have Tarek versus Teto, who I don't 100% know who that is. And Tarek is so strong that we're going to Tarek versus Kamame. I think Tarek has beat Rarkior before. I'm going to double check that as I'm talking. But obviously, Kamame is a different beast. But also Kamame hasn't been playing as much. So I don't know. Oh, no, he's 0-1 versus Rarkior, but it was Cloud? Okay, so it was the Cloud. So I guess I don't know about the Greninja versus Sora. Like, it seems like he'd be comboed pretty hard, but I don't know if that's going to be enough. Then we have Yaoda versus Denkota, the Lucas. Yaoda's probably going to win that. He's strong. Then we have Tamago, who is very strong, over Maneraito. I don't 100% know who that is, so I'm going to give it to Tamago. Dabuz versus Akasa. Dabuz is strong. But versus Tsubaki, I don't know if Joker is a good matchup for Dabuz or if it's more than just Leo beating him, but I will still give it to Dabuz there. Next up, we have Ashimo, who's probably going to prevail in his first set because Ashimo is strong. We have Madzai versus Marcos. Madzai, I feel like he's strong, but I feel like I'm still waiting for his big breakout performance outside of France, and I hope he gets it here because I feel like Madzai, I know he plays, he's Pac-Man, and I forget what his secondary is, but I feel like Pac-Man can do pretty okay versus Ryu, so maybe potentially going to get an upset on Ashimo here. I'll still give it to Ashimo, but I wouldn't be surprised, again, if Madzai won. We have Raflo versus MZK. Raflo, incredibly strong. I think he's going to win that. We have Akio versus Yeast. I know a lot of the Brawler players don't like the Shulk matchup because they're crazy. I think it's super fun. I mean, he's won against the Shulks before, but I do think Akio will probably win that. Then we have Akio versus Raflo. I do think Palutena is one of the characters that does the best versus Shulk, so I will say Raflo will probably win that. We have Wrath versus Wataru, and I don't know who that is, and Wrath doesn't really lose to people that he's not supposed to. Then we have Kept, who will probably win here, and then, again, I feel like, you know, it's Villager. I don't know if Kept is going to go Isabel or Villager, but either way, I feel like Sonic does quite well in those matchups, so it's probably going to be fine. Kaninabe versus G Extreme. Pika versus Fox is quite good for, you know, Pika, so I could see G Extreme winning this. I don't know if Kaninabe would end up going his Mii Sword Fighter secondary for that. And then the next set is going to be Yamanaction versus Echo. Echo, the second best Palu in France behind Raflo, so it's kind of unfortunate they seeded 3 French players in one bracket. That's kind of crazy. But either way, I think Yamanaction will probably win that. And then we have we might have G Extreme, but either way, I feel like regardless of who this is, Yamanaction probably going to win. So finally, we get to the top 192. Thankfully, I'm only doing winners, and I forget exactly who I thought was going to win every single one because there have been so many pools, so I'm just going to go over what we have. Spargo versus Ike, probably will agree with that. Riddles versus Darikusu, low-key, I think Darikusu would probably win that. Carmelo versus Candle, Carmelo's probably going to win that. Cola versus Shion, yeah, like there's a Shion here, and I literally went over it like just now recently. I don't know what's going on, man. I don't know if Cola's just like blind aggression is going to be good enough versus not being able to read Japanese. So that's going to be a tight one. I don't know who to call. I'll just say Shion. I want Cola to win, though. Light versus Masa. I do know that the Falcos do pretty well versus the Foxes overalls, but I think Light is just on a different level. Meister versus Taikei. That's a hard matchup for Game & Watch. I don't know if Taikei's ever beat Mia. Nope, he's 0-5. 0-2 versus the Game & Watch. 0-3 versus the Steve. So I will say that Meister probably going to win that regardless. Ashimo versus Reflo. I feel like Reflo could win that, and then something's going to go wrong, but I'm going to give it to Reflo there. Wrath versus Kaninabe. I do think Wrath will win that. I think he will only lose to Light's Fox, to be fair. Mia versus Waka. Mia is strong. I think Mia will win that. Daki versus Mutace. Mutace is so good versus, I feel like, both Kazi and Steve that I'm going to give it to Mutace there. Gluto versus Umeki. I think Gluto will win that. Zachary versus Super Semi. No offense, Super Semi. Zachary's my goat. Zamba versus Kamame. Low key, that's Kamame. I feel like Kamame might win that. Again, it depends on how on point he is. Zamba's playing super well. If Kamame's playing super well, it's going to be a hot set. Yawada versus Dabuz. I feel like Dabuzz's character, Olimar. So he's just going to go Olimar versus the Samus and probably win that. Then we have, that's Dunado. I've been saying names wrong this whole time. Then we have Daru versus Ryuo. I think Raru will probably win that. And then we have Lima versus Gorioka. I will say Gorioka is going to lose to Lima. Akola versus Fui. I think Akola will win that. Toriguri versus Crepesele. I think Crepesele is probably going to win that, honestly. Onin versus Reno. I do think Onin will probably win that. Or is it Reno? I don't 100% know. Tama P versus Susu. Tama P is able to do really well versus the Steve player, so I will say that Tama P is probably going to win that. Syrup versus Maradona HO. Syrup probably going to win that. Ken versus Siski. I think Siski's going to win that, actually. Sonics versus Alice. Sonics will probably win, even though the Roys have been doing well versus Sonics. I don't think Alice is ready for how good Sonics is. T versus Jazzo, which I said, I think I said Jazzo's probably going to get upset before this, but if it is this, I think T is going to win. Dora Migi versus Omega. I think Dora Migi is going to win that. Cosmos versus Yoshidora. Yoshidora is going to win that over Cosmos. I'm kind of surprised Cosmos is a higher seed than him. No offense to Cosmos. Yoshidora is just really, really good. Tweak versus Level 1. Level 1. I think the annoyingness and the floatiness of Toon Link is going to give Tweak some trouble, kind of like how Tweak lost to Me Gunner last weekend in Capitancito. Snow versus Uame. I think Snow, it's a good matchup, but Uame's kind of just been playing really well recently, but I still will give it to Snow. Shutone versus MK Big Boss, who I don't think was going to be MK Big Boss because he was going to get upset by someone, I don't remember who. Shutone will probably win regardless. Shattuck versus Motsunabe. Falco does well versus Corrin, I feel like, but also Corrin can kill. I don't know. That's a hard one. I'll give it to Shattuck, though. Leo versus Nail. I think Leo's going to win that. And then Akakikusu versus Peanut. I don't know if Peanut has studied up on his Japanese menu. If he has, I think Peanut has a good shot, but either way, it's going to be difficult. And now we can finally get to the top 64. And again, I'm ignoring all the upsets that I already talked about because it is impossible to keep track of literally every single thing. Spargo versus Riddles. Low-key Riddles could do that, even though I know that Riddles, I said it was going to get upset, but I think Spargo will win that. Carmelo versus Cola. I think that Carmelo will win that. I feel like Cola's been struggling with the Steves recently. But Spargo versus Carmelo, I think Carmelo's going to go, I forget who his secondaries are, but I don't think he's going to go Steve, but either way, I think Spargo will probably win that. Light versus Meister, I will give that to Light. Ashimo versus Wrath, I'd give that to Wrath. Light versus Wrath, I give to Light. And then Spargo versus Light, we literally just saw Light win, but this is a different day. I'll get back to this one. Mia versus Daki. I agree that Mia's probably going to win that. Gluto versus Zachary. We were trying to see that at Level Up Expo, and it didn't happen, unfortunately, because Zachary got upset by Ludo. But I still want my GOAT Zachary to win. Zachary versus Mia. Zachary would win that. Gluto would also probably beat Mia, so whoever wins this is probably making it further than Mia here because they've both been kind of beating Mia's ass. Then we have Zamba versus Yawada, who I said Yawada might get upset, I believe, but if it is Yawada, yeah, this would either be Zamba, this would be Yawada or Dabuz. If it's Yawada, I think he can do actually pretty good versus Zamba, but I do think Zamba would still win, and I think Zamba would also beat Dabuz. Raru versus Lima. I think that Lima would win because he's gonna ledge camp him the whole time. I don't know. My gut says Lima. Lima would beat Zamba, and then Lima versus Gluto or Zachary. God, that'd be hype. That'd be so good. I want to see Lima versus Zachary. I want Zachary to make it, and then I want Zachary to win here because he's finally not on the half of Akola versus Toriguri. I think Akola would win that. Onin versus Tama P. I think that Onin would probably lose to Tama P. I don't know how good Onin is versus Bayo. I feel like regardless, Akola will probably beat this one regardless, just because I feel like Akola is not going to lose to Tama P that day. Syrup versus Ken. Low-key, I think Syrup's going to win that. I feel like Syrup is one of the Steves that are really good versus Sonic right now. Sonics versus T, I think Sonics would win that. Syrup versus Sonics, I don't know if Syrup's good enough to beat Sonics, though. Because I don't... that's hard. Because I know that Syrup maybe could do it with Steve, maybe could do it with Ness. I don't know. That's going to be a hard set. I want to give it to Syrup because Syrup's been playing solo recently, and then Syrup would probably lose to Akola because I don't think can play the Steve Ditto. So that would be a little bit difficult for him. Then we have Doramigi versus Cosmos, which I think I said Cosmos was going to get upset before, but Doramigi would probably win regardless. Doramigi versus Tweak if Tweak makes it past Snow, and I believe he had like a floaty mid-tier. But I think Doramigi can beat Snow. I don't know if he can beat Tweak if Tweak makes it all the way there. That's a hard matchup, I feel like, but also Doramigi's built different and will just edge guard the Diddy Kong. So I'm still going to honestly give it to Doramigi there with his play at Level Up Expo. It was so impressive. Shutone versus Shattuck. I do think Shutone will win that with Aegis probably. And then we have MKLeo versus Akakikusu. I think MKLeo beat, or Aka might have beat him with an English menu, which I don't know if that was true. But either way, that's going to be a hard match regardless. I think Shutone will beat Leo, but I don't think he would honestly beat Aka because I feel, well, you would go Aegis. So I feel like Shutone's probably going to make it there. And then Shutone versus either Doramigi or Tweak. I feel like, ooh, that's hard. I feel like whoever wins this will probably also win this, which is kind of scary. So that means I think that it's probably going to be, honestly, Light here. I feel like Light trying to impress the Japanese crowd first time going to Japan. I think that would be a big motivator for him. So I think it will be Light. I think it will be, I want it to be Light, Zachary, Akola, and I think Shutone here. That would be my hype top 8, and then I'm not going to click into top 8. But then I think it would be Light versus Zachary. I think Light would win, but it would be the hottest set of all time. I think Akola versus Doramigi. I think Doramigi would win, and then probably beat Light when they play. So I think Doramigi low-key getting top 2 at this tournament. It's crazy. Like, I've gone over so many games, my head is kind of spinning. I've been recording my second half with 31 minutes. I think it was like 25 before. So this is a long video just because of so many amazing players and games. Who do you think is going to win? Genuinely, not who do you want to win. Who do you think is going to win? I mean, my money is always going to be like on Akola or like Doramigi or Spargo or something like that. So I think those are perfectly fine guesses. I think Light might have a really good run. I think there's a lot of players that might have very interesting brackets. And Loki maybe like level 1's gonna get 5th. What if Shida Yuki just like suddenly gets like 7th or something? That'd be kind of crazy. With this stack to the tournament, again, the most stacked tournament of all time, literally ever in all the Smash games. This is insane. Thank you for watching. Social media and partner stuff is down below. I will see you all next time. Peace.